Welcome to More Than Words, a podcast about treating the whole child, brought to you by the Reading and Language Learning Center. I'm your host, Tristan, and today I'm joined by former Fairfax County classroom teacher, John Thomas, to discuss cultivating a positive mindset for going back to school. Hi, John. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Fabulous. Thank you. We're very excited to have the famous Mr. T here to kind of chat with us today about going back to school. So thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's start with an introduction. So tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay. My name is John Thomas. I was a classroom teacher for 15 years in Fairfax County in fifth and third grade. And I taught a little bit at eighth grade during my student teaching, but felt my best qualifications and need was for the male teacher influence in elementary education.
That's awesome. Oh, I feel like third and fifth grade are there's such a precious year. You know what I mean? You've got a lot of transition, especially in the fifth grade year. So that's awesome that you were able to, have great influence on those kiddos.
Yeah, and that was my goal in going back to school to get my master's degree was to, be a male influence, something I never had as a student myself. Yeah. I was usually one of the only male teachers in the elementary schools that I taught at. So
I'm sure. Wow. Wow. I feel like we always need more male teachers. So again, thank you for being one, and kind of being a role model for other men to, go into teaching, because it is such an important thing that I feel like isn't always there. So thanks for that. So if people were looking for your services, because you're now a tutor, where would they go if they were trying to find you online, or if you have a place that you meet people in person?
Well, I'm very fortunate in that most of my work has come from referrals from parents and families that I taught with. So I can be reached at Thomas Tutoring LLC at gmail.com.
Perfect.
And
okay, I'll put that in the show notes.
Okay. And that's the quickest way. As of now, I've been blessed with a full schedule and the opportunity to help so many kids, and help families as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, let's talk about what you do, because I'm very curious about, kind of how you get to help students and, like you said, and families. And one thing that, the people who've given me great background knowledge on you have told me is that you are good at helping people cultivate a positive mindset for school, because sometimes school can be really hard for kiddos. And if they can just get in the right headspace, great things can happen. So how is it that you help students work on creating that positive mindset for going back to school, or just around school in general?
Right. Well, the goal was to be the present and to be everywhere in the school. And my goal was and my belief is that elementary school should be Disneyland without the rides.
Oh, yeah.
And kids should be part of the school, and they should feel like they have ownership of the school and something to be proud of, and something that they can't wait to get to every day. And so I try to create that environment through being present. I'm a big person. I'm 6'4", about 265 pounds. And so I have a big voice, and, kids see me and they see they see a really tall person. But when I get down to their level, if I get on a knee and talk to them eye to eye, and have a general conversation and ask them, the fear and the anxiety goes away. And then that starts building that relationship. So building the relationship for me was key for every kid in the school. And so during my planning times, I would wander and go down to the kindergarten pod, and I would pop into the kindergarten classrooms to, say hi to the teachers, and then introduce myself to the kids. If they were walking in line to the cafeteria, they would wave at me and I'd wave back, because now they knew me and I was available to them.
Right.
And so my class, I always made it a point to work with a kindergarten teacher, the wonderful Mrs. Pleasant, to have
Oh,
reading buddies. So third grade and kindergartners have reading buddies once a week to,
that
be a mentor for the kindergartners.
right.
And then I progressed, and then I would reach out to the uh, autism preschool program, and
Right.
my kids would go down there once a month and help play and draw, tell stories to, again, for that exposure of, we're one big community, and that when the kids would see my kids in the classroom or walking down the hall, they would see a friend, and they would see a
Yeah.
connection to what they have look forward to in the future.
Yeah. That is so, so special. I mean, schools are, of course, a community, but it is often, um, I think, overlooked to create that communal space because I feel like especially for teachers right now, you're focused on just like getting your own classroom under control and kind of like getting the learning in, right? But that is the communal piece of it is so important so that you can create an atmosphere for students to learn in. So that is such a special way to make a safe space for your kids. So that is so cool to hear.
Yeah, and by the time they come to my class in third grade, I already had a relationship with them.
Right.
And if I gave them a nickname, like one kid was named Nicholas, and I called him
Mhm.
Joey because I told him he looked more like a Joey. And then the other kids would say, "Why is he calling you Joey?" And that was the
Right.
joke for 3 years
Yeah.
until he came to my class. Now I taught his siblings before, and I knew the
Right.
parents really well, and they jumped on the name as well. And it became this fun thing that I had with this one student. And
Oh.
so even now, when the students in upper grades, I still call him Joey, and people are like, "Why is he still calling you Joey?" And and so that again, that is, I'm a big person having fun with somebody who's small and making them feel important because I'm giving them that time.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I enjoyed it immensely. I enjoyed
Yeah.
the connection. I enjoyed the kid perspective of life and laughing
Yeah.
and not taking things so seriously.
Oh,
Then going back
absolutely.
to the classroom and, being responsible for collecting data and all the other things that aren't so much fun.
Yeah.
So, and that's one thing I asked the kids I tutored recently is, what is it about school that you wish would be different? And they said it's too much work.
Yeah.
It's work. It's everything's about
Hmm.
work, work, work. And they don't see any aspect of their day as fun.
Oh.
And that's across the board from first grade to eighth grade.
Oh, geez.
So it's a
And
sad statement because the data
yeah.
collection, um, and it's not just COVID that created it, it's been in the works for a long time.
Oh,
But the
yeah.
data collection has become the priority over the growth of the child.
Right.
And
Oh, that
so,
is very unfortunate.
yeah. And that's why teachers like myself end up leaving to pursue. Now, as a tutor, I get to do what I'm great at naturally and help that child grow.
Right. And so when you have a kid that comes to you that does say that, right? Like school's just too much work. Um, what do you how do you flip the script on that? And what do you tell them and what do you tell the parents to help them kind of change school to be as fun as it can be with all of the data collection?
Well, it is their perception is if I don't do well, I'll get the bad grade. And if I
Mhm.
don't do well, I'll have to repeat the class. There's a lot of false information floating around. And
Right.
there's a lot of, if I don't, here's the punishment. So it's an
Mm,
action reaction where, um, I rarely labeled things as tests. I
right.
didn't need to call it a test to make it a test.
Right.
The word test, it starts the whole anxiety process.
Yeah.
And then once you give a kid a grade, then that kid carries that grade like it's luggage with them. And
Yeah.
it's not a reflection of who they are as a person or a learner.
Right.
But unfortunately, it's a measurement that can either reinforce what they believe
Mm,
or lift them up. Most of the time,
mm,
it's to reinforce that, why didn't I get this grade? And then the bus stop comparisons and
yeah.
kids read report cards on the bus before they get home. Um,
Mm,
and so it's a status. And so if you remove that, you remove the barriers of that negative side of it and make everything positive,
right.
then the kids will believe that they're smart. They will believe that they can. So it's, trying to induce that growth mindset
Yeah.
and that learning mindset of anything's possible any day.
Hmm.
Um, I would point out the things that I would mess up in school or get wrong because I wanted them to see as an adult and as a teacher, I don't know everything and
Right.
it's okay.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
also for my kids in my class, I'd reinforce the fact that they were the greatest kids on the planet and they were in the
Cool.
greatest classroom in the school. And
Yeah.
I would create certain names for days and I would greet them at the door every day with a smile. And if they didn't smile, I'd make them walk around a couple of times until they could smile and come back in.
Oh, yeah.
And so that ownership and community is what's missing today.
Hmm.
And that's the unfortunate part is a lot of kids aren't told they're being, they're smart and they're capable.
Right.
Most of the time it's when they have a difficulty, it's focus,
Yep.
pay attention. And what does that mean to a child who has a learning disability? Did you ever ask the child what it meant to them as with a learning disability? Because
Right.
even the parents, you need to focus more. I said, well, that's like telling them to slam dunk a basketball. It,
Which, if you
right
told me to
now,
do that,
right
there's no
now,
way.
right. There's right now he can't focus. So let's change the word to focus to let's take smaller bites and do more
Yeah.
redirects. And let's do the things that teachers have been trained to do as professionals to help that child in any little way possible during the day. So we can stack those little things to make it a big thing.
Right.
So
So with maybe with like parents at home, do you have them, when you say like take little bites, are you saying like take assignments and break them down into like maybe just do 1 through 3 right now and then
correct.
do something else and come back to it, that kind of
Yeah.
strategy? Okay.
I never gave homework. And the reason
Wow.
why it was when my first year of teaching, I was at the dentist at 9 o'clock at night
Ooh.
as a teacher. That's only, and there was a family there with two young girls. The mom was reading People magazine. The two little girls were struggling with their homework. And mom was
Mm,
tired. She had a long day. And
right.
they're having a dental appointment. And I just saw that as a real disconnect and a moment of frustration for everybody. And right there, I said,
Yeah.
this homework is not valuable enough to create such a negative home, the poor connection between parent and child for something. So if, you know, I never gave homework and I was never mandated to give homework, and
Wow.
I probably wouldn't have given it anyway. Let's be
Right.
honest. Um, so the point is, if they can answer 5 questions, that's fine. Why give them 20?
Right.
So what are you measuring, and what's the tool you're measuring with?
Yeah. I'm so curious what your classroom was like now, because that is such I mean, homework is like the bane of everyone's existence, right?
True.
You get home and you think like, let me just relax for a little bit, and then you go to start homework. At least for me, I was always like dreading it so much that it took longer than it needed to, right? um and it just yeah, like you said, it does create that atmosphere at home where it's like it's an extra battle that can be fought between a
Right.
parent and a child. It's an extra like you said, barrier for the connection. So wow, like I said, what was your classroom like?
Well, my last several years, I'd had flex seating in my classroom,
Okay.
and so the kids had the choice every day where they wanted to do their work
Wow.
and where they could sit and where they could be productive. And it was the choice of that. I was the only teacher in the building to do that. the choice of that and the freedom opened them up to endless possibilities. So if you want to read laying under a table, I had coffee tables, go ahead,
Yeah. Wow.
as long as you're reading. And
Right.
so I have three sons in their 20s, and boys are historically fidgety.
Mm.
And we all know that. And so we're going to say, sit still in your seat for 8 hours and read this
Yikes.
passage instead of, I don't care if you're standing up doing your work. I don't care if you're laying down doing your work. As long as you get your work done and not bothering other people and or being productive, that's fine. And
Right.
so that reputation of that choice and that freedom in third grade was amazing to the third grader. And the kids would come
Right.
home happy. And I had a lot of kids where parents would email me saying, he's not feeling well or she's not feeling well today, but they didn't want to miss class.
Oh,
And that to me was a
wow.
testament of that positive classroom. I would play
Absolutely.
music. I would, joke around with them. But again, it was, they knew that I cared enough for them as individuals that they would do anything in response to me because they wanted to return that love and that
Right.
care to me and didn't want to not so much disappoint, but take advantage of that because they knew they had something that was really cool.
Yeah.
And
And
all it took
that,
was going to garage sales and getting chairs and coffee tables, and parents would donate beanbag chairs
oh,
and lap desk and everything else. They were buying into it as well.
right.
There may have been a couple parents who said, this is not as traditional classroom I was looking for. And I
Right.
said, okay, you're free to move to a different class. That's fine.
Sure.
So it
Wow.
came down to what kind of environment are we creating to help induce learning rather than stifle it.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And this is so interesting because I've had a lot of folks come on the podcast who talk about different ways that the classroom can operate that like accommodations for like kiddos like who are a little fidgety like ADHD or who need to just like move around or do things while they're learning, and it's always been seen more as like an accommodation as opposed to just making the whole classroom that way. And sometimes I feel like what they hear from parents is like, what if my kid is a distraction to someone else? Or on the flip side, like, what if some other kid is standing at their desk instead of sitting? Like, will my kid be distracted? Um, and I feel like you have made a classroom structure such that it is conducive to everyone, and it kind of proves the point of like, no, your kid won't be distracted.
yeah,
And I commend you for that, and I think it's so important that people hear that so they can understand that learning does not happen the same way for everyone.
right. And it's a natural process.
Right.
It's not a forced, and I always went back to Vygotsky's zone of proximal development and the frontal lobe, and that hasn't changed in
Right.
thousands of years, yet
Yeah.
we're forcing so much and it's just not sinking in. So at what point do you recognize that and change what you do and how you deliver it as an educator, then to, nurture and grow the student? And it's like, you can give as much fertilizer and miracle grow to a rose and tell it to bloom, but
Right.
it's going to bloom when it's ready to bloom.
Yep.
And then it's going to have its moment and its time. And then, but until then, why make it frustrating and why make it a negative, combative, the whole teacher versus the student, teacher versus the parent aspect
Right.
is completely can be avoided at so many turns when
Mhm.
you explain as the educator, I'm here 1000% for your child. I'm here to help at any cost because I'm dreaming. I'm waking up in the middle of the night thinking of how I can help this kid. Just going back to that mindset idea of, you know, um, having that kid buy into that school year
Hmm.
means the family has to buy into the school year. That means,
Yeah.
the conversations at home have to be positive towards the school year and
Yeah.
the positives at the bus stop. So I try to create an environment where, oh, you got Mr. T. Wow, you're lucky,
Yeah.
and that was a great thing for a lot of families who may have had a negative experience the previous year with
Yeah.
the style of the teacher, or it could have been a family tragedy or a divorce or anything like that that they bring to the
Right.
classroom.
Mhm.
They could feel safe and they could feel like they didn't have to think about those things for eight
Right.
hours a day.
Yeah.
So the mindset part of it is, for the whole school, and I know a lot of veteran teachers, they're overwhelmed and
Yeah.
they have a lot of discipline issues and a lot of, when you have only two teachers per grade level and you got to split up the classes the best you can, kids
Right.
who shouldn't be together are together, and that creates a whole different level. Or a teacher, has to, deal with 10 to 15 IEPs every year.
Yeah.
That's a lot of extra work.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's, it weighs down the system, and let's get back to the focus of educating children.
Yeah.
And that was my big frustration when I left teaching was, are we really looking after the whole child?
Yeah. And that's why we have this podcast, just for folks like you to help us get back to that. So when you have a family who's coming to you, seeking tutoring or what have you, and the kiddo says school's hard, and you help them kind of like work towards that more positive mindset, what differences do you start to see when, like when they finally start to see school as a fun thing?
Yeah, my favorite saying is, when they say math is too hard,
Hmm.
and I'll say, well, let's look at math, and I'll break it down into math just is a name. It's not too hard.
Right.
It's not too easy. It doesn't care about you as a person. It's just a
Right.
bunch of numbers and a bunch of ways to solve examples. Now, one thing I learned in my grad program is there's a great teacher, and he's like, when you call math a problem, saying let's do the math problems, you're already starting off with the negative uh, connotation of we have math examples, we don't have math problems. And that sort of stuck with me is how we say things and approach it. And so, with the kid that needs tutoring, most of the time they're fairly decent with the process. I might have to show them different ways of solving a problem or
Mhm.
looking at a math example differently by maybe using manipulatives that they don't have in the classroom
Right.
or explaining it differently, showing some shortcuts, and then building up their confidence when they're like, you know, this wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And it changes the narrative of I'm bad at math.
Right.
I'm bad at this. I'm bad at that. And so that was me growing up. I was the worst student possible. I have
Mm.
8 siblings. We all had the same teachers. So um, the goal was to get through school. And
Right.
to get through anything is boring.
Yeah.
It's like, why bother?
Right.
So I try to turn it into, okay, you show me what you think is a hard math example, and then I'll walk you through it.
Yeah.
And I use a lot of self talk and a lot of positive affirmations, not the cliche ones. I can do it, but it's just when you talk to yourself by working through the math example, then you start repeating the same patterns. And math is about patterns and it's
Right.
about habits. So again, it's breaking it down into smaller chunks and then building the smaller chunks to make the big success.
Wow.
And it takes time, and it takes
Yeah.
kids working at your desk.
Right.
And it takes, and those are things that are missing now from the classroom is, kids aren't being, there's no small group work now because everything's changed and
Yeah.
kids need that individual. everybody should have an IEP,
Right.
right? And their IEP is to be brave and to learn. And, with my flexible seating, the funniest thing during IEP um, conversations was they need to sit at the front of the class.
Mm,
And I said, well, I don't
mhm.
have a front of the class. There's no front of the class.
It's
So
amazing.
as you wander and do what you do best as a teacher, um, you meet the goals, and some goals are more specific than others, but it's easier to meet with a positive mindset than a negative
Right.
mindset. Happy kids learn.
Right.
And that's just the bottom
Absolutely.
line.
Yeah. So if you have a teacher who's like kind of noticing um a kid's having a really hard time, and let's say they're building like a positive classroom experience and all that kind of everything like that, what do you recommend that they tell the parents to do at home if they're still noticing like every day they come in and they're still having a hard time kind of like trudging through things?
Right.
um what do you recommend to the parents?
I'm a big proponent of diet.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, diet and sleep.
Yeah.
Video games have Minecraft, and the other one has taken over, and it's the behavior has changed. And um, as I'm tutoring students, their siblings are in the basement playing video games, screaming at the top of their lungs
Oh yeah.
because something's happening in Fortnite, and that behavior then transfers over to the school. So
Mm,
a calm, peaceful place at home is the start. And it starts with not overbooking the kid, not having karate and swimming and this and that every day. Or, and this is a sensitive subject in Northern Virginia, but when a kindergartner is being dropped off at 7 o'clock in the morning and being picked up at 7 o'clock at night,
yeah.
we need to look at priorities, and we need to
Yes.
look at family life work balance, because at 5 years old, um, that's not healthy for the child.
No.
So it starts at home, and I always got this as third grade teachers: how do I get my son to read more? And
Mm,
then I ask the parents, do you read in front of them? And they usually
right.
say no. And they say, well, I have a Kindle. I say, get rid of the Kindle, buy a book,
Mm,
and then turn off the TV and read a book and have them see you reading a book,
right.
and then talk about the book at dinner. And that's
Yeah.
another thing, is dinner's not being eaten together anymore.
Mm,
It's a grab and go situation. And
right.
it's a product of our society where we are. And I've done it with my own sons, but
Right.
as a teacher, when the kid comes to school tired, I could tell by the bedhead how
Yes.
the day is going to go.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I could tell how the kid is dressed, pants on backwards,
Oh
shoes on
gosh.
the wrong feet.
Right.
Yeah, we've had in third grade pants on backwards.
Oh no.
Yeah, shoes on the wrong feet, inside out clothes. The lunches consist of chips and cereal,
Yeah.
um, and it just goes from there. And so then the teacher has to handle 25 to 30 kids who are tired, cranky, and nothing's worse than a cranky third grader.
Right.
So
Right. Ooh.
it's everything, and as a classroom teacher, you know, you're mentally filling the day, almost every minute of the day, with activities, with learning.
Right.
There's very little downtime, and the kids feel that there's little downtime.
Yeah.
So we need to build in more downtime for
Yeah.
across the board.
Oh yeah. And
So as a tutor, what I see is I bring humor, and I bring um, games and activities that they
yeah.
can't get in the classroom, and I bring that one-on-one attention. And I first thing
Hmm.
I tell them is how smart they are.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and they don't even say, then why do I need a tutor? I just tell them how smart they are and how capable they are of going to the next level. And I show them
Right.
something a little bit more difficult, and I'll say, wow, you're this is a fifth grade math question. And wow, that I did a fifth grade math question. And all they want is a pat on the back.
Right.
And I did
Absolutely.
get lots of hugs as a
Oh,
teacher, which I
yeah.
accepted happily.
Yeah.
And I still get them as a tutor. And
Oh,
when the kids are excited and come up and give you a hug when you leave, it fills my bucket for sure as an educator.
yeah, definitely. And I think you really, like hit the nail on the head with saying, some of those things in Northern Virginia are such a like hot topic, having the kid have such a long day because whether it is parent parent pushed or student led, right? Where they're like, I want to do this activity and that activity and everyone's smart. So no one actually feels smart, all of those kinds of things because it's such a densely populated area and um a lot of kids do a lot of things all at the same time. But you're totally right in that there isn't enough downtime. There isn't enough time for kids to actually take a beat and relax, to see what their interests are and see what they actually want to forge ahead with. Um, and like you said, they're not told often enough that they're smart because in this area it feels, at least I mean I grew up in this area, so it at least feels like everyone is smart, right?
Right. Yep.
um so it doesn't feel like you could also be smart, if
Yeah.
especially if you aren't the top 1%.
Well, and the AAP program through Fairfax County
Mm-hmm.
is a disgrace. And
I don't actually know the
I'm just
AAP
going to say it
program.
like it is. To call
Yeah.
a kid advanced at 7 years
Ah.
old because they did okay on a standardized test. That
Yeah.
kid wears that like a medal of honor, and they're
Mm-hmm.
lumped together with the same kids for the next 4 years,
Yep.
and they're the elites of the school. It's a shame,
Yeah.
and because they get this false sense of elitism, and
Yep.
then the other kids get the sense of I'm beneath them, or I'm
Right.
not. I'm smart too. Why isn't anybody seeing that?
Yeah.
And so it's a program to make parents happy. And
Right.
I'll say these things as a past teacher that teachers can't say now. So it is there for the parents so they could wear a
Yeah.
badge, and then they could look at their SOS scores at the bus stop and compare
Mhm.
and say, look at my kid. He's
Right.
also on the travel baseball team. Look at
Right.
me, look at me, look at me,
Mm-hmm.
rather than, look at the depth of my kid.
Right.
So it's very superficial. And
Oh yeah.
again, it's not growing the child.
No.
So it's
Yeah.
great. Now it's great because when I have conversations with people, I can get really real and I can
Yeah.
be honest. Now, I was very honest before. My back to school
Right.
nights were pretty legendary, but now I can really tell it in order to support teachers who are still in the system and struggling every day with lack
Yeah.
of support, with lack of trust, with if you contact a parent about a child's behavior, you're getting 10 questions on identifying, and you know so it's to all the teachers that are still there, god bless them, because
Yeah.
they're dealing with more behavioral issues than actual educational issues.
Right.
So
And
it's hard to recover, and build back things when something happens where it's the kids get a little bit scared of going to that place where it should be safe.
right. I mean, it's very interesting. I always wonder like what parents should actually be doing at home to kind of facilitate like being a cheerleader for other kids, right? Like as a kid, you're your own cheerleader and like we're like the parents of the cheerleaders, the teachers are as well, but do you tell the kids to like pump up the other kiddos, right? So that
Sure.
they know everyone's smart and we're all doing great, as opposed to it being that like, I got an A here, I got an A here, you got a B, that kind of attitude.
yeah, without, naming the student of the day or the student of the week, you
Mhm.
could tell a story of somebody that and
Right.
tell a great story of how that person overcame something. And, that person knows that you're talking about them, but you're
Right.
not giving out names. And, the guidance counselors do an amazing job with
Mhm.
building in now, they're building in yoga and many
Oh yeah.
meditations. And then, it's just building that relationship with their peers
Yeah.
as opposed to, the big show and tell every morning is, look, I got this trophy, I won this trophy. And there's some kids who they can't afford to be part of after school sports.
Right.
And so, it's the haves versus the have nots most of the time. And the kids know it, and they, it's building that compassion. Um, it's building that community of, if you're in my class, we're a team and
Right.
we build each other up. We don't tear each other down.
Right.
And there's a great poem by, I think, James Guest, and it's called the Builder, and it talks about a man sees a big building, and takes craftspeople to build it, and it takes architects years to design it, but it only takes the
Right.
unskilled worker one day to tear it down.
Yeah.
So that, when I read that poem in class and we talk about that, we talk
Mhm.
about what's it like, and then let the kids share their experiences. And everyone has an experience, but that takes time from the pacing guide, and that takes time from what's what principals and admin want to be produced during the day. So
Right.
a teacher as myself, I would do it anyway.
Oh yeah.
Was,
Of course.
yeah, that didn't slow me down. And so it's, we have families of suicide. We've had
Mhm.
families of cancer deaths. We've had
Right.
families of divorce. We've had families of, just tragic things, and the kids still show up to school.
Mhm.
And how do we support that child?
Right.
Um, we're not trained for it, but we're human
Yeah.
beings,
Yeah.
and we can support that child through love and community.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So
And
it's
you mentioned, oh, sorry, go ahead.
that's okay.
Oh, I was just going to ask, so you mentioned administrators and how they've got their own like checks and all that kind of stuff that they have going on, but we want to create this community and we want to foster this safe and fun space that school can be. So, what role do you say that school admin can play in like fostering that positive culture, and better supporting the teachers in creating beautiful classrooms like that?
Well, most administrators were classroom teachers at one point,
Yeah.
and they have to go back in their memory and go back to realize what a difficult job it is. Some have very short term memory loss when it comes to that. And so supporting the teacher becomes critical. I need to criticize or evaluate the teacher rather than support the teacher. So um, out of my 15 years, I had six principals, and two principals really got it. And they spent most of their
Yeah.
time outside of their office. They were
Oh,
visible. They were in the classrooms. They were kneeling down. They weren't asking the students, what is the teacher, not doing? I've had
right.
that before. How is the teacher treating you? Um, Trying to find issues that weren't there.
Right.
And so the supportive teachers that knew every kid's name, knew the family life, went to all the after school events. Um,
Right.
I would go to soccer, baseball, football games on Saturdays of my students just to
Oh,
show support outside the classroom and make them feel important.
right.
And when one admin would show up, it would be the same thing. You give up a couple hours on a Saturday, but it makes all the difference in the world on a Monday when they
Yeah.
tell all their friends that Mr. Thomas came to their soccer game.
Yeah.
And so they need to understand that um, if I want to order pizza on Pi Day in fifth grade and measure the circumference of the pizza crust and order $60 worth of pizza out of my own pocket,
Right.
come on in and have a piece of pizza and join the lesson rather than pull the teacher in the office and say, you can't order pizza. What are you doing?
Right.
Missing the whole point of the lesson. And so they're bogged down with their administrative stuff,
Mhm.
but they have to understand that they're not the managers of the school. They're not the right the overseers of everything, but they're part of the community. And the school is a community asset.
Yeah.
And not walk out the door at 5 o'clock.
Right.
Right? Show up, bring a cup of coffee. When Teacher Appreciation Week rolls around, don't give your teachers pencils. Give them
Yeah.
time. Stop
Yeah.
by the classroom so they can use the restroom.
Yeah.
And then talk to the kids and the family as not the person who punishes the kid if they get sent to the office, but somebody who understands what's going on and somebody that can have
Mhm.
an extra conversation. And so that's what I've seen over my 15 years.
Yeah.
Like I said, 2 out of 6 principals that really actively seem like they enjoyed their job,
Yeah.
not just the bigger paycheck.
Right. Absolutely.
Another soapbox moment.
I like that one too.
But I
I
would get
think,
the fact, I would get called in and I would get the questioning. Why did you do this?
yeah.
Why are you not having desks this year?
Right.
And I don't need to explain that.
No.
It's for the kids.
Right.
Nobody says,
Yeah.
why did you spend $2,000 on stuff, on books and everything for your
Right.
classroom?
Right.
So,
You'll love to hear this and you'll giggle. I had a teacher in eighth grade who he was a like history teacher. And so we would get through the class material by he'd bring a big beach ball and
yeah,
he'd put shaving cream on it and we'd throw it around the room. And it would be kind of like our popcorn to be like, all right, like your turn to answer the question. We could like draw on it with the shaving cream. We would draw on our desks with the shaving cream, like all that kind of stuff. Um, his classroom was very messy. His classroom was a lot of fun. We all had a great time. He would play like oldies from his little like boombox. It was amazing. Um, and we all had an absolute blast in his class. And we were going over material. And I am positive that admin would pull him and be like, why are your children covered in shaving cream at the end of the day? Like, what are you doing?
right.
But
Exactly. But you
at this
remember him.
point, I remember him. And he was, again, one of our favorite teachers. Everyone wanted to be in Mr. Woody's class. Like, it was again, like I said, absolute best. And even my parents, like, bought into it. Like, they were like, this sounds hilarious. This sounds great.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're learning.
And didn't you remember that one teacher that you got a great score on that history test? You don't remember that history test that you got the great score on because
No.
it's irrelevant.
Right.
And I just received a text message from one of my ex students who's in college, and
Oh,
they
yeah.
sent me a picture of the writing plan that I introduced in fifth grade that she still uses in college.
Oh, my gosh.
So to me, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
And this student had a rough year before the year I taught and wasn't supported. And so I had to bring her way up. And
Yeah.
then not only, thriving in college, she's a great kid.
Yeah.
And, you remember those teachers um, because they spent time thinking and caring about you as a person.
Yep.
And it's
Absolutely.
the Maya Angelou, people don't remember what you did for them, but they remember how you made them feel.
Yep.
So
Oh, it's amazing. I think that was my like last like question for you.
awesome.
Yeah. Did you have anything
Well,
else you wanted to add?
no, it's just, I appreciate the opportunity. And,
Yeah.
Nicholas was the prime example of, what I did for my 15 years.
Yeah.
And Nicholas was a great kid. And
Oh,
he had his struggles and his anxieties and he had his moments, but I'd put my arm around him and I would say, look, it's all right. It's
yeah.
okay. We're not going to do any
Yeah.
work right now. Let's go read a
Right.
book for 10 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
And, and that's all it took.
Yeah.
And so as an educator, I was great at that. And
Yeah.
so I had to leave education because it was
Yeah.
completely going in the wrong direction.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And for my 15 years and my thousands of dollars, I got a fist bump from the principal saying, we'll see you around. And there
Oh,
you have it. There you have it. I showed up at
okay.
6 o'clock every morning, 2 hours, three
Yeah.
hours before school started, and I
Right.
stayed late. And all I got was a fist bump.
That is
Yeah.
I'm
They,
very glad that you have families who see your worth.
oh, they definitely do. And
Right.
that's
Yeah.
and that's why I love is I get Christmas cards and I get text messages and and I get a lot of referrals for tutoring, which is fantastic. And I'm still in the education business because I can't do anything. I couldn't do anything else.
Right. Right.
I mean, it's just
Yeah.
who I am.
Right.
So,
Well,
but
thank
I
again.
appreciate
Thank
the
you for
time.
yeah, thank you for being here. This has been absolutely amazing. I think people are going to be so excited to listen to this.
And if you want to start a podcast on disgruntled old grumpy teachers, let me know.
I mean, we'd love to have you back if you want to, bring other folks.
Yeah, no doubt. We could start something
Uh,
nationally, I guess.
exactly. Thank you so much to the audience for listening. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a little rating and review. It helps other folks find the podcast, and we'll chat with you next time.